a week or two before the fight, he might say he has an injury and not fight me because he's scared. They didn't respond to our emails, to our calls until the end of February. That tells me something. Those are the words of Sergey Kovalev, talking about his rival and the guy he'll be facing in the ring very shortly in a rematch, Andre Ward. He believes that Ward is scared of him and that Ward might even try and pull out of the fight at the last minute. Anything is possible in boxing. You never know what's going to happen. One thing I do believe is that deep down, Andre Ward was taken aback by how hard Sergey Kovalev hits in that first fight. And Ward is not used to being in a competitive fight. And that's an incredible thing to say about a guy who has been operating at the top level in boxing for several decades. When I say several decades, I'm talking about all the way back through his amateur career. This is an Olympic gold medalist, people. This is a guy who hasn't lost a fight since he was, what, 12 years old or something crazy like that, and he's 33 now. This guy, at least as a professional, hasn't had a competitive fight in many, many years. Psychologically, what did it do to him to not only be in an extremely competitive fight against Sergey Kovalev, but a fight which ended up razor close on the scorecards, a fight which a lot of people felt that he lost. He's not used to being in that position psychologically. He's used to being able to sleep at night knowing that he won a fight comfortably and that there was no controversy about any decision. That's what Ward is used to psychologically. This time around, he had a guy in there who, okay, he was competitive with, but he wasn't able to dominate the way he dominates everybody else. How much of that is going to get to Andre Ward psychologically? Will it get to him enough to give him cold feet to the point where he'll pull out of the fight at the last minute? I personally doubt it. I think Ward has too much pride. Some might even say too much ego to go and do something like that. And at the end of the day, this is not a guy who has seen Floyd Mayweather type money. This Kovalev rematch is probably going to generate a lot more money than the first fight did, because this is a grudge match now. In the build up to the first fight, there was a lot of respect between the two parties. It's more difficult to sell a fight where both fighters respect each other and are not talking trash about each other than it is to sell a grudge match. So is Ward going to throw away the biggest payday of his career because he's a bit intimidated by Sergey Kovalev's power based on what happened in the first half of the first fight? I personally doubt it. I think, as I say, he's got too much pride, too much ego, and there's too much money to be made. But this kind of reminds me of what Chris Eubanks Sr. said, what he said several times, which is that to make it in boxing at the top level, you have to be deluded. You have to convince yourself that things are not the way that the public or your opponent perceive them to be. You have to convince yourself that you are actually in a better position than you really are, to some extent anyway. Now, it's a very thin line because that can backfire in certain situations because you can get overconfident and complacent. But at the same time, without having a slightly delusional attitude, you can't bounce back from adversity. People call Amir Khan deluded all the time. But if he didn't have the kind of mindset that he has, where the glass is always half full rather than half empty, then he would never have come back from the Bradis Prescott defeat. He would have never have come back from the Danny Garcia defeat, so on and so forth. And he did pick up good wins after both of those losses. So you have to be a little bit off mentally to succeed in the long term at the top level in professional boxing. You have to be. And to that extent, I agree with what Chris Eubank Sr. says. That you have to be a bit deluded. Maybe this is a case of Sergey Kovalev being a little bit deluded, convincing himself that Ward is petrified and he might pull out of the fight, building himself up in his own mind to be the big bad monster, the killer, where this cowardly Andre Ward is running away from him, this guy who stole a decision in the first fight. Now he's coming back with a vengeance to punch holes through him. Maybe that could be the case. You know, maybe this is just the way Kovalev G's himself up for a fight. Maybe it'll work. Or maybe it'll backfire. Maybe this is overconfidence, particularly with the talk of Kovalev only doing 2 hours training a day. You let me know what you think in the comment section below, people. I find this whole build-up fascinating. All the different things that have been said in interviews, the training regime of Sergey Kovalev, the different perspectives, the different perceptions that both fighters in both camps have of the other fighter in the other camp. Very, very interesting stuff to me. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. You guys often bring up things which I haven't considered or thought about. So it is really interesting for me to actually read a lot of your comments so I can get a different perspective on things. So please leave them in the comment section below. All right? It's happening. I'm out.